So I would like to introduce Reverend Kelly Robbins. We've had her with us before. She was awesome, and we are just so happy to have her back with us again. So help me welcome Reverend Kelly Robbins.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. It's hard not to look at myself on the screen here. So thanks for being here today. I know it's been a wild, wild week, and we're all maybe in different places. I know I have spent this week just recharging and getting grounded. And I looked at the topic today and thought, man, how is this going to work? Talking about abundance. So I want to just all of us just acknowledge that there's a lot going on in our world, and there's a lot of unknowns. And no matter where you are with things, and we're here to fill up and to use this place, this really sacred space, to be with each other in community, and to take this time to open our heart. And did I touch something?
No, you did not. It's chat GPT. Apologize.
Okay. So that's God going, yeah, girl. Let's be intentional that we're here to fill up. And we are going to be talking about abundance. And I do have a message talking. I loved her song, and it fits so well, how we're not alone. And how can we be here now and leave here today and go forth with our lives knowing that we're not alone, knowing and feeling that that presence of love, and that presence, that intuitive nature of connectedness and unity in a positive way. Because these same principles that we're going to talk about abundance apply to our thoughts. They apply to just how we're being on a soul level with ourselves and with each other, and how we work with the universe. It's how we use these same tools as we process the news, as we observe life and observe our families and our communities. We use these principles, just how we allow people into our space and the boundaries we set. So just being open in that space of, what does that look like for me? I'm choosing to acknowledge this sacred space and having that intention to fill up with whatever it is that you need today. There was a farmer, and he was out in rural Nebraska, and he grew corn. He grew like really high quality corn. And in his community, they had a contest every year of who grew the best corn, and he won every single year. And he was interviewed for an article in the paper, and the reporter, the journalist, asked him, he said, Farmer Joe, I learned something interesting about you. I learned that you shared your seeds with your neighbors, with the neighboring farms. And how can you afford to do that? You have the best seed in the community, and you compete with these other farmers. How can you afford to share your corn seeds with them? And the farmer said, well, sir, don't you know that the wind picks up the pollen from the corn in the fields and it swirls it around? And not only would my neighbors get my seed, but I get their seeds as well. And if they have poor quality corn, it affects my corn. So if I am going to grow good corn, it's to my benefit to help my neighbors also grow good corn. And so it is with us in our lives. When we're talking about abundance, there's this intuitive knowing that we are connected to all, and how we show up for ourselves and others is how abundance shows up in our lives, and that the quality of our responses affects the quality of what we receive. And the thoughts of love that we share affects the love we receive. So if you're like me, I've done a lot of work on abundance. I mean, I've had a business, I've taken coaching and read books, and there's a lot of lot of good quality content about abundance, and it's often an area people struggle. Today, we're going to be very specific about one little sliver of abundance. We're talking about abundance and how we show up with others and how others show up with us. So we're kind of taking just this one piece of it. And I'm going to invite all of you to look at, make this personal. What area of your life do you not feel abundant? It might not be money, but just be open to what that might be. And then as you're playing and mulling it over in your mind, where in this piece am I interacting with others? How does this when we're talking about shared abundance, specifically, how am I showing up with others, and how am I allowing others to show up with me? So if we're going to look at our interconnectedness with others. So to begin with, a core of our teaching and a core of our awareness of ourselves is separateness versus oneness. And has that not been more prominent than in the news this week, right? Separateness versus oneness. Separateness leads to competition rather than cooperating, right? Where in this area of your life that we're playing with today, how are you operating from lack or limitation? And I just invite you to sit with that for a minute, because sometimes we really don't know the answer. And sometimes we haven't asked ourselves, sometimes asking ourselves questions a little bit differently shifts the energy a little bit, so a different answer can appear. So where am I operating from lack or limitation? Where am I operating from separateness? Because it's really built into the very structure of our community. Let me tell you let me read this to you. This is the definition of economy, the definition of economics. It is the study of scarcity and its implications for the use of resources, production of goods and services, growth of production and welfare over time, and a great variety of other complex issues of vital concerns to society. So I don't know if you caught that in the beginning, but the definition of economics is the study of scarcity, like it's built into the United States of America, the world. We talk about economics all the time, and it's the study of scarcity. So today, one task, one invitation upon us is, how do we individually pull ourselves out of that collective consciousness? We hear, there's a section on the news of economics, business, like it's prominent. It affects all of us, our businesses, where we work, our families. How do we pull ourselves out of that collected consciousness of the study of scarcity? It's not the study of abundance or the study of unlimited resources. It's the study of lack of resources. And that's what our financial system is built on. So just that awareness, and if you can have a thread that you pull out of it or pull out of the collective consciousness, how can I disengage from that? And it's a matter of proving it wrong, proving that scarcity or that lack wrong. And many years ago, I have an altar, a place where I don't always sit at it, but I have an altar. And I had this reading that I pulled out of the Science Mind magazine. I had a quote by Ernest Holmes. I had a little reading by Ernest Holmes, and he was talking about nature. Ernest Holmes is our founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. But he's talking about nature and how abundant nature is. And he talks, I don't have the exact quote, but he was talking about proving it wrong, where you feel a sense of scarcity. How can you prove it wrong? And you go out in nature. He said, just look around. There's millions of seeds of grains of sand. Turtles, when they lay eggs, they lay like millions of eggs, and not all of them hatch, but there's just an abundance. And I took his reading and I went for a walk around my neighborhood, and I was like, okay, Kelly, let's prove it wrong. And it was in the fall, because I remember seeing the abundance of leaves everywhere that weren't raked up. And it's just little, it seems little, but we've got this ingrained in us that we're not even conscious of it really. So anything that grabs your attention, how can I prove it wrong? I'm in a group for, just an example of how this can be used. I'm in a group with other spiritual leaders outside the Boulder area. I live on the north side of town. And this woman is a musician, and she came into it's a very small group. She came in and she said, guys, I was feeling so, like our bills were paid. I was feeling so good. And then they raised our car insurance, and it was like $200. She goes, and it just all fell apart. And she had this whole, you guys, I'm sorry. She had this whole story about what was going on. And she had like a lot of marketing and all sorts of business things going on. And I said to her, told her this story. I said, how can you prove that wrong? And she just sat there and was just real quiet. And she comes back, like we meet once a month. She come back the next month and she said, she was so grateful. She said, I have never heard that before. And I went home, it's only $200. I mean, really, so only $200. She went, she goes, I put this on sale and did this and that, and I got the $200, but it had never occurred to her to stop this story. Like she had this story we all listened to of how this happens over and over, right? When I think I've got it. If you find yourself in that situation, catch it and say, how can I prove this wrong? Hers was every time my sister does it, like, you know, there was just all these threads to it. But how can you grab that and prove it wrong? So that was Ernest Holmes' teaching, was prove it wrong. And knowing we have this awareness of the definition of economics as scarcity, how can we prove it wrong? Where is it showing up? And we're talking about abundance. Abundance doesn't have to be money. Abundance can be like an abundance of leaves in your yard, an abundance of mosquitoes. I went to Texas this summer, man. I have never been around so many mosquitoes in my entire life, but we can have an abundance of lots of things. We can have an abundance of fear, which might be prominent in our communities right now. So be picking words apart as you're playing with the story of your situation that's going on right now. And then the other aspect of this that I would like to point out when we're talking about shared abundance is that God works, Spirit, the universe, it works through us. It works through people. If we're talking about money, money comes from God through other people to you. So how are you in relation with others? And just sit with that. How are you in relation with others? Because it comes from God through others to you, and then vice versa, right? This year, and it's always changing. So I am a minister, and I don't have a church community like this, but I do a lot of weddings and funerals, like rituals. I do chaplain work at a local hospital, St. Anthony North. And this year I had an abundance of weddings that I officiated. I had about 50, and there's a lot of driving with the wedding, and it's great. And I thought, it was busy. I said, I don't want to do any more than 50 weddings. It's a lot. And, you know, I'm good with the number, but I still, you know, you only make so much money on a wedding. So what am I going to do? How am I going to be different next year? Because abundance is constantly moving and growing and shaping, just like the divine is, as it's expressing through us. So me playing with this abundant, I don't need any more weddings, and I would like to have more money. And I'm looking at the couples that I married and the ones that I enjoyed the most. I went deeper with and did the premarital. I have a premarital counseling package I put together. And I thought, well, this year I'm just going to really focus on more of that deeper connection, helping the couples really build a strong foundation with their weddings. So having more purpose in the depth of them moving forward. So you see how that kind of evolves for us. What might that look like for you? Are you stuck with whatever it is that we're playing around with today? How can you say, okay, this is good, and I would like to expand in this way. The divine is always changing and growing and expressing and moving. How can you shift things a little bit, focus that energy, maybe in a different way? I have a quote I'd like to share by our founder, Ernest Holmes. God wills us to have everything. As we express life, we fulfill God's law of abundance, but we do this only as we realize that there is enough good to go around. Only as we know that all of God's gifts are given as freely and fully as the air and the sunshine, alike to all. So just hearing that, picking your area that you're playing with, are you knowing that God's gifts are given as freely and fully as the air and sunshine to you? Or are you maybe not feeling that? And just kind of breathing into it. Sometimes it's just that acknowledgement, that awareness that, yeah, I feel stuck here. It doesn't feel abundant. It doesn't feel prosperous. Another aspect of this, abundance I'd like to share. Let's do this. I have a quote by Charles Fillmore. He was the co-founder of Unity. Unity is also a New Thought teaching. It's very similar to Centers for Spiritual Living. Charles Fillmore said, "Many who have found the law of true thinking and its effect wonder why supply does not come to them after months and years holding thoughts of bounty. It's because they have not developed love. They have formed the right image in their mind, but the magnet that draws the substance from the storehouse of being has not been set into action." So he's talking about love. He wraps it up. I think love and forgiveness go hand in hand. So love and forgiveness, I think we can take those two concepts and first apply them to ourselves. Am I knowing love to myself? Loving myself even though I might not be in the place I want to be? And have I forgiven myself for anything? Edwene Gaines, are you all familiar with her? She's also Unity. She's a minister. She wrote a book called The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. It's kind of a classic. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. But her 4 spiritual laws are tithing and giving, setting clear-cut goals, finding your divine purpose, and the 4th one is forgiveness. So as we're talking about shared abundance and abundance with others, do you have some forgiveness work to do? Even if it doesn't seem to be in relation to what's going on, homework might be, where do I have some forgiveness work to do? Because that's totally relationship with other people, right? Like the farmer and his corn seed, the principle of abundance and the universe that we live in teaches us to see the world as a place of just unlimited possibility and to approach life with a mindset of generosity and of abundance, generosity and gratitude. So be alert for small ways and small acts and how sharing freely of abundance can benefit others. And I know we just have a couple minutes. I want to talk for just a second about that. We talked about forgiveness, but I want to talk about that power of love that we touched on, because love is that energy that all other things flow, I would almost want to say, on top of. So I like to visualize. If I'm working on abundance or prosperity, I might kind of close my eyes and visualize whatever that might look like for you, but a flow of energy, a flow of prosperity. And that energy that you might see or be feeling and playing with, we start with love first and see love coming from us out to others. And then on top of that, we might put abundance, or we might put forgiveness, or whatever else is coming up for you. It might be a sense of power. Power is a gift of God. It is a quality of spirit, or whatever, just whatever else. But we start with that energy of love. And I didn't want to skip that piece because it's important. It's important to always back us up into that love, and that love energy and that love vibration really got those muscles really need exercised right now, because this week that might not be what we were all feeling. And it might be, but it could be a beautiful time to tap into our own sense of love and apply that. Not, you can put the prosperity or abundance off to the side and do love on everything and everyone, and then bring that piece in. Okay. So with that, I would invite us to take a moment in prayer as we deepen into these beautiful and amazing teachings of spirit, knowing that that energy that is God, that vibration of divine abundance, is also in everyone, in every place, in everything at all times, even when we can't see it, even when we can't feel it. We can know the beauty in that truth and feel it throughout the cells of our body. As we know and recognize this truth of the divine, this truth about the permanence of abundance and love and prosperity and peace, we can know this truth for ourselves. We can take a sigh of relief knowing that these qualities of the divine are not only known and true in our head and in our intellect, but throughout our bodies and throughout the bodies of all across the world, all across our community. As we realize and recognize these truths, we can take that moment to breathe and see and feel the prosperity and the love and the core truth in all of us, in all of humanity, and in ourselves. We give thanks for the truth of God, give thanks for the divinity in abundance, the divinity in love and prosperity, the divinity in forgiveness. As we give thanks, we can release these words to the law, knowing without a shadow of a doubt that as these words are spoken, we know that they are true and it is done. And you can join me if you like in saying, and so it is. Thank you.